Hello everyone, this is Nathanael Rutherford with Vol Basketball Fever, here once again for another Tennessee matchup breakdown here on a Vol Basketball Fever. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Like this video if you do, and share it around with friends before the game on Tuesday evening when Tennessee takes on South Carolina. Subscribe to the channel while you're here as well. We'll have more Vol content as the week goes on, and Lady Vol content if you're a Lady Vol fan. So check it out. Subscribe to the channel here, listen to our podcast, Vol Basketball Fever and Lady Vol Basketball Fever as well. And like this video, turn on notifications so you get all notifications for whenever you upload any new videos like this, or podcast episodes, or interviews we have with any special guests as well. But guys, we have another game for Tennessee. Mercifully, the Vols return back home where they've had a lot more success than they have on the road this year so far. Tennessee coming off another disheartening loss, I'll say. Another road loss in the SEC. Tennessee now 1-2 in SEC play. But again, coming back home, and we'll face what I think is a much easier opponent than LSU, especially with a matchup I think that Tennessee matches up a lot better than LSU. I'll give my thoughts on the LSU game in the next podcast that Gene Henley and I do, which will probably come out later this week after the South Carolina game. So that hopefully will be coming out Wednesday night or so. But on to the actual game against South Carolina. It's a 6:30 tip-off. And Tennessee, again, hosts South Carolina, a team that they've had a lot of success against, especially in Knoxville. And Tennessee, again, this year has just had a lot of success, a lot more at home against a lot of cupcake teams, yes, but they've also beaten Arizona and Ole Miss, two power conference teams at home as well. Away from home this year, South Carolina is not very good, but we'll get to more on that in just a second. This year, South Carolina has had some pretty good wins, but they haven't really done super great against quality competition. They're 3-2 against high major teams, and one of those wins came against a really bad Georgetown team. They've also beaten Florida State, which was a pretty good quality win, and their most recent win this past weekend was against Vanderbilt, a nail-biter, a 2-point game, but South Carolina did win that game against Vanderbilt. Their losses came against Clemson and Auburn, a blowout loss to Auburn, in fact. But in those 5 games, South Carolina is only averaging 68 points per game, and they're giving up an average of 70.6 per game, So their stats overall are a little skewed by the fact they didn't really play a whole lot of other good quality competition in their non-conference play other than the teams I just mentioned there, Florida State, Clemson. Georgetown's not very good, and they also played a couple other teams that are worth mentioning, but not any really stellar non-conference teams up until you get into SEC play for South Carolina. I will say to them, the positives for them, they are an exceptionally good rebounding team with a pretty solid defense, at least outside of SEC play so far. Right now, South Carolina ranks 40th on KenPom in defensive efficiency rating, and they're only allowing 67.4 points per game. And right now, they're really good offensive rebounding team, averaging about 13 per game, which is 22nd in the country of offensive rebounds per game, and 33rd in total rebounding with 40.3 per game. They won't wow you with their size, but Wildens Levicu, I think is how you say his name, he's 6'11", and the rest of the team rebounds a lot better than their height would suggest. So again, he's 6'11", but a lot of the guys who play for them in the main rotation are around 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", so not like super short, but not the tallest team you'll see either. But they do a really good job of rebounding and getting second chance points, especially with the offensive boards they get per game. But I'll say a lot of those numbers, really all those numbers, have been worse in SEC play and noticeably worse. South Carolina has given up at least 70 points in both the SEC games they've played this season so far, and they're only averaging 8 offensive boards a game and only 30.5 total rebounds. So again, 13 per game basically overall, but only 8 per game in SEC play, 40 total rebounds per game overall, and only 30.5 in SEC play. And again, they're giving up at least 70 points per game in both of the SEC games they've played so far. So they played Auburn and they played Vanderbilt. So they played probably the best team in the SEC, and a team that's going to finish still bottom half, probably bottom 4th or 5th in the SEC this year. So it's a weird kind of start for them, but they've played SEC teams that are, I don't think, good matchups for them, and they're 1-1 currently. South Carolina does love to run. They love to run. They're ranked 29th in adjusted tempo on KenPom, which I believe will be one of the fastest teams Tennessee's played this year. I feel like one of the teams they played in non-conference play played a little bit faster than that, but tempo-wise, Carolina is one of the top in the country. They average 62.7 field goal attempts per game, but that number is down to only 55 per game in SEC play. So we'll see if their tempo, they can keep it up in SEC play, because I don't know, they haven't so far really. But ideally they want to push the tempo, because right now over a fourth, 25.9% of South Carolina's shots have come in transition this year. So they really like to push the tempo, get some steals, get some offensive rebounds, and really just kind of go and try to get some transition buckets. Kind of like what LSU does and kind of like what Tennessee does. Tennessee ranks right around that same area as South Carolina when it comes to percentage of shots in transition. So really, both teams like to push the tempo a little bit, get turnovers, force turnovers, and get a lot of steals, and then go and try to score on the other end. So South Carolina they do it a little more often than Tennessee, but they're not as efficient at it as Tennessee. Because typically Gamecocks don't get that many shots at the rim. They currently rank 269th in the country at shots at the rim, at 33.8% of their shots coming in or at the rim there. But they love to shoot mid-range jumpers and on their 2-point jump shots, because it seems a lot like Tennessee teams of the past, where I guess they got probably more shots at the rim. When you think about the Grant Williams and whatnot, they dig to the rim a lot, but they also love to shoot mid-range jumpers. Right now, South Carolina ranks 44th in the country in 2-point jumper percentage at 32.2%. So 32.2% of their attempts come with a 2-point jump shot. So not a dunk, not a not a layup, not a post move, not a shot at the rim there in the paint, but from shots, a little bit outside the paint in the mid-range area. So they'd like to shoot a lot of mid-range jumpers. And overall, they're a really good 2-point shooting team as well. In SEC play this year, they're making 56.5% of their 2-point field goals, and that's 50.8% on the year. So again, they're a very solid 2-point shooting team. However, they're not very good at 3-point shooting. In SEC play, they're only hitting 31.7% of their threes, and only 32.1% on the season as a whole. So Vol fans can relate to a team not being a very good 3-point shooting team. But Carolina does a good job of, again, mid-range and getting to the basket some and being a good 2-point shooting team, but they're not very good 3-point shooting team. But I will mention they had a really good game. There's one game where they shot like 40-something%, and it was a game where they lost, but they did a really good job of actually converting on those buckets against Auburn. They didn't put up a lot of points in that game, but they finished, I think, 10 of 24 from 3, but they really, really struggled on their 2-point field goals in that game. And that was one of the reasons why they didn't win that one. Their leading scorer this year, South Carolina, Eric Stevenson, is a transfer. In fact, this is his 3rd place he's transferred to. He started at Wichita State, played at Washington last year, and now he is at South Carolina. And he's been phenomenal in SEC play, averaging 17 points per game in SEC play, but he's averaging just shy of 12 points per game on the year. They also have George Mason transfer AJ Wilson. He started all 8 games he's played in this year. But really the rest of the group that South Carolina has and they play consistently, the rest of the core group is mostly made up of returning players or freshmen. So guys who didn't have a previous stop, guys who've been here for a couple of years, or are brand new in terms of just getting to college basketball in general. You have Jermaine Cuisinart, who's been banged up, but has returned to SEC play and has scored, I think, 9 points in both of the SEC games he's played so far against Auburn and Vanderbilt. As I mentioned earlier, Wilden Zlevecki and is also here. James Reese, the 5th, is a returnee, and both Devin and Chico Carter are young contributors. And both those guys really, I want to say James Reese, he's been really good in SEC play as well. Keyshawn Bryant is a guy who all fans probably recognize that name. He is out right now with a shoulder injury. So that's a key guy who is out for South Carolina as they get ready to take on Tennessee in Knoxville. Kind of last point here that's kind of transitioning into the points about Tennessee. South Carolina turns the ball over a ton right now this year, and they've done this a lot throughout the whole season. They rank dead last in the SEC in turnovers per game in conference play at 21 per game right now. And they're in the bottom 25 in turnovers per game in the entire country at just under 16 turnovers a game. They've turned the ball over 15 or more times in 8 games this season. And UT has forced at least 15 turnovers in all but 2 of the games this year. So again, South Carolina has turned the ball over 15 or more times in the majority of their games. And Tennessee, in all but 2 of the 14 games they've played this year, have made opponents turn the ball over 15 or more times. South Carolina ranks 309th in the country in assist to turnover ratio, which is impressive because they actually have a decent amount of assists per game as well. And the Vols, however, rank 13th. So Tennessee's at the top end of that spectrum, 13th in the country. South Carolina, 309th, very near the bottom there. So that to me is the key. Tennessee needs to force a ton of turnovers, because if they do, I think they win this game. And another big point here that I think that Tennessee really, really needs to hone in on for this game is they need to be aggressive. because South Carolina fouls a lot. They're tops in the SEC in fouls committed per game in SEC play, and they average just over 20 fouls committed per game on the season. So Tennessee wasn't the most aggressive team in non-conference play. They've gotten better in SEC play. Tennessee was only attempting 13 free throws per game in non-conference play. That is up to 21.7 free throws attempted per game in SEC play. So a pretty big shift upward for Tennessee. And I think they need to continue to do that in this game. And if they do, that should be great news for Tennessee that can get South Carolina foul trouble. Carolina gives away fouls, it feels like. Teams are attempting a whopping 23 free throws a game against them this season, which is one of the highest numbers in the entire country. And that includes almost 30 free throw attempts per game by their opponents in SEC play. Vanderbilt, I think, attempted 36 in their game this past weekend against South Carolina. A big reason why Vandy was able to hang around in that game, because they just kept getting to the free throw line. Again, Tennessee didn't do that great in non-SEC play, but now that they're in SEC play, the Vols are attempting a lot more free throws than they had, but they need to actually get better at hitting them. It's one thing to get to the line. You got to hit them when you get there. They're called free for a reason, folks. Tennessee's only making 69.2% of their free throws on the season. I think it's like 70.1%. So it's like a negligible difference in SEC play. Tennessee, y'all, their free throws. Practice them. I don't know. I know with Fulkerson, it's a case of I think it's recovering from COVID's been an issue for him. I don't think it's with him. I'm willing to give it a pass. Some of these other guys, like with it's Kennedy Chandler or whomever else that's missing free throws. Guys, come on, focus. Make your free throws. I'll give it a pass to Urosh. Big guys are typically struggle with free throws as well. He was really good. Which game was he? He was 6 of 8 from the free throw line, and I think it was Arizona or Alabama. I'm forgetting which game that was now. But he was like 2 of 5 against LSU. We need to see Tennessee shoot better free throws, and especially in this game where I think Tennessee has a really good shot of getting to the free throw line a lot more. As I mentioned, kind of at the top of the breakdown here, Tennessee returning back home, where they've been a lot better. They've won 9 straight games at home. This season, they're averaging 83.1 points per game at home and shooting much better overall from 3 and just overall from the floor at home than they are away from Thompson-Boling Arena. South Carolina, meanwhile, has struggled on the road away from home. They're 3-3 away from home, including 1-2 in true road games, and they're averaging just 64.5 points per game away from home. And that's even worse when you look at their true road game, where they're averaging only 61.3 points per game in the 3 true road games they've played this year. So they don't do a very good job away from home. Tennessee does a lot better job at home. I feel a lot better about this game, a lot better than I did about the LSU game this past weekend. South Carolina's offense ranks 188th in the KenPom offensive efficiency rating right now, as I'm looking at it currently. Tennessee's only faced one other team in that kind of range, in that 160 to 200 range, really in the 150 to 200 range. It's been, Tennessee's had some really bad offenses and some really good offenses they faced this year, not many in that kind of mediocre range. The only other one that's kind of comparable is Ole Miss, and they're like 167th right now. And of course, Tennessee held them to 60 points and only 51 points in regulation. Of course, that game was, as we all know, pretty miserable to watch, but Tennessee's defense did do a great job. And Ole Miss, again, in that game, they turned the ball over a ton. South Carolina has proven to be turnover prone and not very good on the road. I think South Carolina's defense isn't as good as Ole Miss's, but it's still a quality defense. Y'all might want to be prepared for another, what's the term? What's an anti-barn burner? Just some kind of mud fight, rock fight type of game in this one, because I don't know this is going to be particularly a high scoring game for either team either, because it just doesn't seem like it's going to be, in my opinion. But Tennessee, again, really good at home. South Carolina has only faced one other top 10 defense on KenPom. Tennessee's ranked 3rd right now. There was 2nd, but now 3rd after the LSU game. They've only faced one other top 10 defense, and that was against Auburn. And they lost that game 81-66, and they shot just 40.7% overall from the floor. We'll say, though, that again, that game they shot 41%, almost 42% from 3, but that was the game where they really struggled to get anything going in the paint, because Auburn's defense is phenomenal in the paint down low. They just do a really good job of not letting guards cut to the basket, and doing a really good job of Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith, just phenomenal players. So I don't know if Tennessee has quite the same type of defensive lineup as Auburn does, but Tennessee's defense is just really good overall. So I don't expect South Carolina to put a lot of points in this one either. South Carolina likes to try to force a lot of turnovers, but Tennessee doesn't really turn the ball over a lot typically. I already talked about how Carolina turns the ball over a lot. Tennessee doesn't. And the Vols just average just under 12 turnovers a game, although that's gone up some in SEC play. They're right at 15 a game in SEC play. South Carolina forces 18 a game in SEC play and overall this season. So that's something to keep an eye on. If Tennessee can force South Carolina into a lot of turnovers, great. But you can't give the ball right back to them. Tennessee has to also maintain possession and not commit a bunch of silly fouls and not commit a bunch of silly turnovers. So keep the ball in your possession when you have it. Talking about Kennedy Chandler, Vescovi's done a better job. But guys, you got to play in control. You can't try to do hero ball. You got to play within the offense, within yourself, within the team. And Tennessee should be able to come out this one with a victory. Kind of the last thing I'd mention here is two guys I think are going to be key for Tennessee in this game who've been really key for them in SEC play. Two guys you probably wouldn't expect, but that's Olivier Camois and Uroš Plašek, actually. Both of those guys have stepped up big time in SEC play. Camois continues to impress me in his breakout year. And in SEC play, he's averaging 12.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.3 blocks per game in the 3 games Tennessee's played in SEC play so far. And Uroš has been a really nice surprise in SEC play. I don't think anyone saw this coming. Averaging 7.3 points and 6.3 rebounds in conference play. He's actually Tennessee's leading rebounder in SEC play this season. Again, him and Camois are the 2 lead rebounders. He's got 6.3 and Camois has 6. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty impressive to me that Uroš Plašek, a guy who I personally was not expecting to, play significant minutes and be a significant contributor in SEC play, has been one of Tennessee's better players in the last 3 games. 7.3 points and 6.3 rebounds is really nice. And again, those two are going to be key for Tennessee, especially if John Fulkerson is still not able to play more than 18, 20 minutes like he has been the last couple of games because of COVID. So if Fulkerson's going to be sidelined, only going to be able to be out there 15 to 20 minutes or so in this game, it's crucial that Camois and Uroš have good games and produce in the paint when they're asked to. Or Camois, go out and hit a 3. But that'll be it for this game. Again, I have a lot better feeling about this one than I do the LSU game, and I think all you Vol fans do too. Tennessee has typically played really well against South Carolina, or at least one game. I don't say always played well, but typically Rick Barnes has handled Frank Martin at South Carolina. These two played each other in the Big 12 as well, and Texas and Kansas State. But typically Rick Barnes has done a really good job of beating South Carolina and beating Frank Martin in the SEC. Whereas Barnes has been owned a lot by Will Wade and Bruce Pearl, Barnes has owned Frank Martin. So I expect this game to go Tennessee's way unless there's another COVID breakout or something happens, or unless that LSU game proved to be a turning point in the wrong direction for Tennessee. I still expect the Vols to win this one. We'll see. Give us your thoughts down below. Comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this game. What do you think are the big keys? Do you think Tennessee has a turnaround? Because I think this is a great bounce back opportunity for Tennessee after that LSU, I don't want to say debacle, but after the loss and just the frustrating way in which they lost that game and shooting themselves in the foot time and time again. This is a really good chance for a get right game. I think South Carolina's, they're decent, but they're not great. And I think they're going to finish bottom 6 of the SEC. So I think this is a chance for Tennessee to go get a win before you have some more tough opportunities, tough games against Kentucky and another one against LSU coming up. So thank you all again. Again, I'm Nathanael Rutherford. This is Vol Basketball Fever. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, turn on notifications, all that YouTube stuff, and also listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you get podcasts, we're there. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you on Tuesday.